Hi, my name is Katie Krummick. I am one of your instructors for Design Thinking for Social Innovation. This is my first lecture. It's week 2, and I'm really excited to be with you and share some of my ideas about how human-centered design can help us to identify social problems and work on coming up with solutions and interventions that will help address those social problems. I'll also do a little bit of orientation to the way that the first half of the course is going to work in terms of the work that you're going to produce and the tools that you're going to use to produce that work. Let me share my screen and jump into the slides. Okay. Let me see what I can do here. Okay. So what we're going to discuss again today is human-centered design definitions and mindsets, scoping a problem space, and introduction to design frameworks. And those are the tools that you're going to be using in this class. I like to start out with kind of a story to tell or a way to describe how I think about human-centered design and its relation to solving problems. And I like to set that context by first saying that we are living through this incredible age of innovation, that there are all kinds of technological advances and things in the world that didn't exist 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And it's really exciting, and it creates this culture of innovation that we're surrounded with. And yet, we as a species are facing incredible challenges around the environment, around social issues, around systems of oppression, all kinds of things that we are facing, including obviously the pandemic that we've just been living through and are still living through to a certain extent. I know it's not the most uplifting way to start, but I like to bring this up to say that we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that we used when we created them. So we have this culture of innovation. We're surrounded by all these amazing, innovative products and technology, and yet we have these problems, and we need to figure out how to apply some of those innovation mindsets to solving these big social problems that we're facing. And I'm sure as all of you are navigating, the pandemic and forest fires and all kinds of challenges, that we all feel the urgency to address some of these social needs. And we have this culture, again, of creativity and disruption and reimagination. Everyone's talking about innovation, but the question is, how do we get there? For me, in my practice, one way is through a process called human-centered design or design thinking. And a lot of corporations and organizations have taken up design thinking or human-centered design to try and drive innovation. And that spans from for-profit companies, nonprofits, NGOs, government agencies are all exploring applying human-centered design to these tough challenges. And I like to show this slide to say, design, we used to think of design as the output of the process, right? So like you're an architect and the output is a building. You're a fashion designer and the output is a shirt. You're an interior designer and the output is the way that a room looks and feels. And design thinking and human-centered design has helped to shift actually the field away from the kind of end product and towards a process that can be applied to many problems in many contexts that really can be used to drive strategy forward. And that's the way that we're going to think about leveraging design in this course. So for me, I define human-centered design as a process that leverages the methods and tools of design to help non-designers creatively solve messy human-centered problems. Human-centered designers focus on people's behaviors, emotions, and motivations. So for engineers, typically the way that they enter this Venn diagram is through the idea of technical feasibility, right? Is something possible? Can a drone fly a pizza a mile, right? Business viability is all about whether there's a market for this offering and whether the cost of the offering and the market demand for it kind of is in line, and that makes sense in terms of the marketplace. As human-centered designers, we start with human desirability first and ask, is it solving a need? Is it really this intervention making an important contribution to a person's life? But the truth is that in order to be truly innovative, you have to get to the center of that Venn diagram. You have to get to the star. Something has to be technically possible. It has to make sense in terms of a market. And it also should meet a human need. I think the thing to say for us is that we just start with that perspective of human desirability. So, social entrepreneurship. A lot of you are in the social entrepreneurship certificate program, and so wanted to talk a little bit about how this all lines up, right? Here's a definition of social entrepreneurship as a multidimensional construct involving the expression of entrepreneurially virtuous behavior to achieve a social mission, a coherent unity of purpose and action in the face of moral complexity, and the ability to recognize social value creating opportunities. So applying the kind of skills and mindsets of traditional entrepreneurship, which is about, again, kind of creating a solution, a product, a service, an intervention that's going to be attractive to consumers, and applying those mindsets and structure toward a social problem. So you take that kind of Venn diagram of, is it technically possible? Does it make sense in the marketplace? Is it solving a real human need? And you put this box around it, which is that social problem or environmental problem. It's the context of using this kind of innovation process toward a social good. But it's hard, right? Innovation is not an easy feat. And if it were an easy feat, everyone would be doing it and achieving all these innovative solutions. We would stop having all these very significant challenges in the world. So I like to use a metaphor to describe the innovation process and why I think it's so challenging. So inherently in an innovation process, you don't have an end outcome in mind, right? If you did, that wouldn't be truly innovative. It wouldn't be creating something new and novel. So inherently, there's all this ambiguity that you're having to navigate. And in this metaphor, I like to use this idea of the dark woods, right? This is that ambiguity. And at the other end, there's this potential solution, but we don't know the path. We don't know where we're headed, and we don't know what that outcome looks like. For most of us, we're not willing to just kind of wander into the dark woods and hope that we find our way through to the other side. But we know that there's a tool that can help us build confidence around going into the dark woods, and that's a flashlight. So in this metaphor, you use the flashlight. It illuminates a little bit of the woods, enough for you to feel confident to move forward. And as we know from using a flashlight, as you move forward a little bit more of the path is illuminated. So in this metaphor, for me, the flashlight are really the tools of design. So leveraging the methods and tools of design to help us get a little bit confident about moving forward. And then as we build that confidence, we get a little more confidence until eventually we land on a solution that we feel conviction for. But that metaphor presumes, right, that we want to be out in the ambiguous wilderness in the first place. And for a lot of us, we feel really comfortable inside our cabin. It's cozy, it's warm, we know where everything is. Why would we really want to venture out into that dark woods? And particularly if we feel like there's a risk, right? There's something out there that's going to injure us or harm us or, end the process. And it makes it not worth it. And this, I promise, is the only pun of the day. So what are some of those barriers to innovation? What are the things that are keeping people inside their cabin and preventing them from being willing to kind of grab their flashlight and head out into the woods? So one of those ideas, I think, is path dependence. So just being kind of mentally unable to get out of the kind of norms of the way that things have always been done, right? I work a lot with educators in my work, K-12 educators, and they have a lot of path dependence, right? They have one vision of, or potentially one vision of their experience of education, and it's hard to break free of that and see other possibilities. There's also our own baggage, right? That this is how it was for me. So I have always had to struggle with trying to find fair housing that is affordable, and I just can't imagine that we would have a different opportunity for others. Risk aversion. So being afraid of kind of taking these bold steps and making these experimental choices when there's something to lose, right? In terms of maybe money, reputation, all of those pieces. So that can be a real barrier to innovation. And then systemic challenges. So being aware that as much as we may come to a solution that we believe in very strongly, there's also systemic constraints and compliance issues and all kinds of things that we also have to navigate. So how do we let go of our assumptions, feel comfortable taking risks, and get energized to tackle these systemic challenges? For me, again, my flashlight is design and leveraging human-centered design to help us move forward and navigate that complexity. And then the question is, how do we lead through those the challenges of tackling complex human problems? And I think part of what helps us to actually lead through that process are design mindsets. And there's many design mindsets, many articles written about this, but these are the ones that kind of resonate for me. So one is questioning the status quo. So if you're going to start an innovation process, you have to believe that if you make changes to the system, that outcomes will change, right? And that, I think, fundamentally is asking you to be in the position of questioning the status quo and what currently exists. Approaching problems with optimism, kind of same thing. If we put effort into this situation, we will get better outcomes. Embracing ambiguity, so being willing to kind of go out into a process that you don't have a clear picture of the end result for. Getting inspired by people. So the practice that I utilize in my professional life is called human-centered design. So in this process, we want to really deeply understand and deeply get to know the people that we are working to serve, so that we can meet their needs on their terms. And that part of that process is getting inspired by people. Having a bias towards action. So instead of planning and meeting to plan, to meet to plan, to keep planning, in human-centered design, we like to quicken the cycles of having an idea, testing it out, learning something from it, and taking action in small ways to help advance the project. Similarly, experimenting early and often. So again, increasing those cycles of experimentation And the reason for that is to give us space to learn when things fail, to allow them to fail, and then to really be able to iterate and move forward based on what we learned from that failure. And then finally, building towards bold solutions through mitigated risk. So again, most of us aren't willing to kind of put everything out on the line for something that we are maybe not confident in. And I think human-centered design helps us to build that confidence over time. So by the time we're ready to implement and kind of go all in, we have all this work behind us that helps us to feel that conviction and that confidence to take action. So, there's a lot of conversation in the world, a lot of debate and discussion about what design is, what human-centered design is, what design thinking is. And I want to just set some terms for our course that are aligned with the way I think about this practice. So fundamentally, I believe design is a method for solving problems, especially complex, tenacious problems involving humans, not just them. Design work, I believe, when done thoughtfully and with purpose, is equity work. So designing for others with their needs and desires in mind, instead of with our goals kind of only at the forefront. A great story of this that demonstrates this comes from the early 20th century. And this is a Native woman from California, a tribe that's in now what is northeastern California. And a big part of their culture was that the women would use these stones and grind acorns. And you can see that in the image. And if you go to this area, you can find these divots where women used to spend a lot of time grinding acorns. And at some point, the Army Corps of Engineers came and, looked at this and said, this is an engineering problem. Like, we can solve the need for grinding these acorns pretty quickly, and that will free up all of your time. And so they built this machine and they set it up, and then they left, and they came back like 6 months later, and they noticed, that machine is full of dust and it's not being used. And what they realized was that actually they had solved a problem that no one in the tribe wanted solved. That grinding acorns was a critical part of the social fabric of the tribe. And that when the women were grinding acorns, they were supporting each other and gossiping and teaching their children and being together in all of these meaningful ways. And because the Army Corps of Engineers just projected onto the situation the solution, the thing that they implemented was never used. So again, designing from an equity-centered perspective is about putting aside your assumptions, your beliefs about the problem, really understanding deeply who you're serving and engaging them in the process of making decisions about what they need to have better outcomes. So designing systems and experiences that give everyone what she or he needs or they need to reach her or his or their full potential. And this comes from a group of consultants who specifically work on equity-based projects. And they say, if we believe design thinking is the right tool to use to redesign products, systems, and institutions to be more equitable, then we must redesign the design thinking process, mindsets, and tools themselves to ensure they mitigate for the causes of inequity. The prejudice of the human designers in the process, both their explicit and implicit personal biases, and the power of mostly invisible status quo systems of oppression. So realizing that whatever innovation process we're involved in, we bring our own limitations, our own biases to that process. And so it's very important for us to be in touch with that, as well as be very careful and thoughtful about the processes that we put into place so that we're not furthering inequity that already exists or creating new harm in a community. I also believe design work is systems work. So making strategic changes to the system to create new possibilities. How can we make changes over here that ultimately have a cascading effect that creates those better outcomes we're seeking? And I believe design work is continuous improvement work. So how can we take the thing that we're learning, the thing that we're implementing now, and continue to refine and develop that thing so that the outcomes that we're seeking continue to advance, right? And as maybe the intervention we've created now isn't working anymore, we can iterate and shift so that we can continue to have those solutions that are going to make the best outcomes for those that we're seeking to help. Using the methods and mindsets of design to fuel a cycle of learning, changing, and growing. So again, being able to try something, learn from it, iterate, and pivot as necessary. So the way that we're going to organize this course is that we're asking you each independently to think about a social problem that matters to you, that's important to you, that's relevant to you, that you want to explore and work on. And for some of you, you may be pursuing creating a business, and you're very much kind of doing that with real intention in mind to actually launch something. And for some of you, you may not be. You're here to learn, and this is really an academic exercise. And anything kind of either of those or anything in between is totally okay. But we do want you to actually go through this process instead of just kind of hearing us talk about it. We want you to actually participate. So we've included these sustainable development goals set forth by the UN. And they pretty well encompass kind of all of the different areas of social kind of challenges. And so want to present that to you. It'll be in the design frameworks that I'm going to show you in a minute as well. So this is kind of the place to root your, initial ideas about where you want to work. Now, I want to just dig in a little bit deeper into what it means to really deeply understand those areas and social problems. Excuse me. So I love to use this quote from Bill Moggridge. He was one of the early designers of the laptop computer, the kind of industrial design of laptop. And he says, "It doesn't occur to most people that everything is design, that every building and everything they touch in the world is designed." So again, these kind of traditional categories: products, spaces, buildings, events, processes, tools, curricula, systems, and software. And here are some examples, right? A park bench, the park itself, the Ferris wheel, the way that we vote and participate in democracy, the way a city is set up to manage or not manage traffic, the way we pay our taxes, for better or worse. In schools, the way kids are able to go to the bathroom or not. And I believe even systems of inequity and oppression. And I'm going to use pictures from the segregated South in the mid-20th century as an example of that. And I think one interesting thing about these pictures is that a lot of times the designs that show up are these signs, right? Signage that basically represents policies about controlling people and where they can go and what they can access. So I think it's really important to recognize, for everything from the park bench to systemic racial oppression, are kind of products of human choice and have been created and designed by us. And I think it's important because to state that, because once we realize that most everything is designed, we begin to see that most everything can be redesigned. And the creative response to the segregated South in the mid 20th century were all of these different strategies for protesting and boycotting, different signage, different actions. And of course, this work is still happening today. So the process of fighting against those systems of oppression are also creative acts. They are designed by the people leading those movements. So this is a social movement, right, towards racial justice, and it is designed. This is an example that you're going to read about this week of a product, the kind of little blue sleeping bag there called Embrace. And the idea of this product is that infants born in the developing world, a lot of times are very far from access to a hospital. And a fair number of babies are born prematurely or under birth weight, and they need to be kept warm for a certain period of time so that they can stabilize and grow big enough to be outside of that space. And a lot of times those babies in remote villages aren't even able to survive getting to the incubator. And so they need more immediate intervention. And so this solution is using a heat transfer wax that you can heat up with just boiling water, and it holds the temperature of that sleeping bag to keep the babies warm for long enough for them to be transported to a hospital where they can be in an incubator. So this is a social enterprise. So the folks who invented that device and are now raising funds and finding donors and selling product have created a social enterprise that is creating a social good in the developing world. And this is also designed, right? So everything from social movements to products and services are all designed to create better societal outcomes. So I like to use this quote: a social enterprise is any business venture, nonprofit or for-profit, created for a social purpose, mitigating or reducing a social problem or market failure, and creating social value while operating with reference to the financial bottom line and with discipline, innovation, and determination of a for-profit business. So again, taking those kind of mindsets and tenets of entrepreneurship and applying it to a social problem and creating social value. So what does this mean for you? So you have the opportunity in class and in life to reflect on a social and or environmental problem that is meaningful to you and work to find an innovative and sustainable solution to that problem. And you can work on that in this class. And in fact, we want you to be doing that real work so that you can immerse yourself in the tools and practices that we're talking about and really learn by doing. So you have the opportunity to become a social entrepreneur. Social entrepreneurs are committed to creating and sustaining social value, not just profit. They see and pursue new opportunities to pursue that mission. They are continuously innovating, learning, adapting, and improving, just like what I was mentioning before. They're acting boldly without being limited by current resources, and they exhibit heightened accountability to the constituencies served and the outcomes created. Okay. So that's kind of the context again, and the way that I'm thinking about human-centered design as it relates to social innovation, and how we're going to be kind of using those ideas and mindsets in this class to help you to take action on your projects. And we're going to use a tool called Mural to do that. So I'm going to just close out of this. Stop sharing this screen and open up this. Okay. So you should see this. This is actually the class list. So you go to this design frameworks link. It is in the syllabus, and I'll send out a link also over D2L. You should find your name in this list, and there are links here to individual workspaces. So that I've made them for you. They're each your own kind of private space. And when you click into one of those spaces, you're going to see a board that looks like this. And actually, oftentimes when you click in, you're going to find yourself up here in this corner, maybe even really zoomed in very far, which is a little bit disorienting. But you should see where this says demo here, you should see your name. And if your name is not there, please let me know and I can make sure you get to the right workspace. But essentially, if I zoom back out, this workspace is going to be a series of design frameworks that you are going to leverage in the first or the second, third, and fourth week of the course. And then the fifth week, right, prepping, going into the midterm, you're going to refine these tools and turn those in, and that's going to be your midterm project. Each of these tools is going to require you to do additional work, and every week I'll talk to you about what those things are. So you're not going to be able to just log in here and do answer some questions on these sheets and then be done. You're going to have to go do some secondary research or conduct some interviews or do some brainstorming work. So there'll be other things that you need to accomplish. We have the UN Sustainable Goals here. And in the first activities of this week, you're going to look at these goals. You're going to select one and put it here in the center. And then you're going to start to complete a mind map around that problem space before you move on to the next activity. So that is orientation there. But before you get started on that activity, you need to orient yourself a bit to mural. And there are a couple of things to say about that. One is that there are some great basic tutorials that will help you to understand how to navigate mural, and I've linked those in the syllabus, and I'll send a reminder out for those. You can also zoom into this corner part of the board and see different mural tips about navigating and contributing to the board. So click in here and it will give you these different tips. I think the two main things to really consider are how do you move around the board? So how do you zoom in and out? Let's see if I can get it to work. Zoom in and out. How do you scroll around and move around the board? And then also, how do you use this map here? So if I know I'm in week 3, I can click here on this little map in the right-hand corner, and it will take me to the different spots. The other really important piece is how to kind of make contributions to this board. So if you look over here on the left-hand side, there's a menu, and if you click this little Post-it note, there's Post-it notes that you can drag in and make bigger and then click on and type into. And part of the idea here is that you just are going to take Post-it notes and drop them on top of these worksheets. And then that will be kind of how you complete the work of the assignments. You can also just bring in a text, little bit of text and type into that, and that can also be a way to contribute to the space. You can also use icons. So if you click this star, there's some icons that come up, but you can also search different icons. So I can search mouse and it'll bring up a lot of different mice. And then I can bring a mouse in and make it bigger and change colors, etc. Maybe I'll make my mouse red. And then I can also search, let's see, cheese. Then I can bring some cheese in for my mouse. It's going to come in really small, but I can make it larger. I'll make that blue. And then lastly, there's some other features here, but I think another thing that's really has been useful for me is searching images. So you can go in here and search different things, and it'll pull up kind of stock images from the internet. And then I can pull those things out into the board, and I can make them bigger, and then I can add contributions to them. This is funny. My name is unusual enough that actually, if I search myself, I will come up. So there's a picture of me as well. Okay, so those are kind of the main features of Mural, and I've created a little kind of warm-up area. So this is information from my experience, my life that I've added here, and I would invite you to do the same for you and really be able to play around with different features. One thing like this, so if I zoom in here, this is my website, my personal website, and this is what happens when you click or when you paste a URL. So if I go to the New York Times, and let's see. And maybe I want to have something about sharks. I can click on this URL here, hit copy, and then I can paste it here, and it will link actually to the article, which is also really handy and useful. So I would recommend that as well. So those are some of the basics of Mural. And so one of your assignments for this week is to really familiarize yourself with Mural and how it works. One of your, let me see, I'm going to pull my picture back up. One of your assignments is to, again, pick that problem space that you want to focus on. And then the rest of the assignments are to really complete these design frameworks. So I'm just going to delete the silly things I pulled out here. Oh. And so the first framework is this mind mapping exercise. There's instructions here at the top. And again, you're going to take the problem that you identify and then kind of create this mind map of all the related things that you're thinking about in terms of that space. The second tool is asking you to look up an article or research about the problem topic that you've chosen. And there's an article here, if you click on this, that comes from the Field Guide to Human-Centered Design that gives you a little bit more context around the method of secondary research. But finding that article and then completing the reflection questions here. And that's going to help you to kind of gain context around the problem that you've identified. Quantitative data analysis. So this is about looking for statistics specifically around the challenge that you're working on, and then doing some analysis of those statistics, including thinking about analyzing the data from an equity perspective specifically, so that we can be grounded in kind of the inequity that's kind of baked into the problem space that we're working on. And then stakeholder mapping. So thinking about what are all the organizations, groups of people, demographic groups of people, different types of people that are kind of involved in this problem, and how can we map them out so that we're making sure that we understand the system and the people involved in the system, but then also how are we using an equity lens to identify kind of who are the most powerful or most represented voices in that stakeholder system, and who are the least represented. So who are the voices we want to be sure that we're elevating to, again, avoid kind of creating new inequities or, continuing to protect inequities that currently exist in the system. So those are the design frameworks for this week that I would like you to complete. You don't need to worry about week 3 or week 4 just yet. So you're focused on week 2. And then the other piece that is an assignment in D2L is to complete something called the Paseo Protocol, which is essentially an exercise that you do with another trusted person around reflecting on your own identity and who you are, where you come from, where you might have blind spots or biases. Because as I mentioned in the kind of lecture that I gave, we're bringing all of those blind spots and biases to the work that we're doing in the community. And it's really important then that we are grounded in our own kind of perspectives so that we're making sure we're not missing and creating inequitable outcomes for people through kind of our own blind spots. So completing the Paseo Protocol, it is a very personal thing, so I'm not going to ask you to turn it in, but I highly recommend that you take some time to reflect on that as well. And as always, I have office hours on Wednesdays at 11. Just send me an email if you'd like to connect during that time. And I look forward to meeting all of you and answering any questions you might have, any questions about Mural, any questions about the assignments. But really excited to start this journey with you. So thanks so much.